Hey, do you like books that are absolutely, completely different from anything else you've read? Books that upset you? Maybe make you cry? Frightened? Make you think about your life again and again? Well, our next guest has written a book that is just amazing. It will hold you to the edge of your seat. My name is Vin Dacquino, and our next guest is Sheila McGlarry. Sheila, good friend, good writer.
Thank you.
Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Sheila, you have written an amazing book called In Mourning the Loss of a Living Child. That book needs that title needs some explanation. Talk to us.
Well, I have a son, and the book is about him and my journey with him through teenage drug addiction. And
so you've had some real serious ups and downs. As a mother, you've had to make some tough decisions. Tonight, you're going to share some of those intimate moments, and you're going to tell us what it's like to receive a phone call and have your son say, "Mom, I'm in jail." Tell us, where and when did you say, "I need to tell this story"?
well, I think, Vinny, that you know, most teenagers start experimenting with drugs or rebelling at a young age, and I think a lot of us parents tend to blow it off as normal teenage behavior, and it can tend to escalate. And unfortunately, we went through a few years of, you know, the rebellion and being suspended from school, and, you know, smoking pot and drinking and whatnot. And as time progressed and went on, he, you know, got into some legal trouble. And at 16, 17, he was removed from the home. We had a PINS petition, and removed from the home and put into, you know, a special school where he would have to stay there, and he could come home on weekends. And then from that, you know, it continued to escalate. And I think I started writing, being a member of the Mayapack Writers Group for quite a few years. I actually started writing this book through journaling. And then one day I just decided to write.
I know the writers, including myself, were floored. The first time you came to that group and you read that first chapter.
I remember.
We looked at each other and we said, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
It was just absolutely unbelievable. It's a tough thing being a parent. I raised 2 children of my own. I'm working on 2 grandchildren now. And, you know, it's scary because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You know, you have people saying, you know, be strict. Don't let those kids get away with anything. And then you have people saying, you know, let them go. It's their lives. And it just seems that there's no one formula for raising children.
There's not.
And it has to be heartbreaking when it doesn't work, when things start going wrong. I mean, it's a scary thing. I remember when my son was very little, and he had pneumonia, and he was on a stretcher, and they wanted to take blood, and he had very tiny veins, so they had no place to get blood, and they kept sticking him, and he was saying, "Daddy, please, please, they're hurting me, they're hurting me." And I just wanted to tear that doctor to shreds. They pulled me away, brought him in a room, and through the closed door, I could hear him yelling, "Daddy, why are you letting them do this?" It killed me. I can't imagine what you have gone through, watching your son suffer, knowing that he was in jail, knowing that there's so many things, the blame, the guilt. Talk to me a little bit about that blame and guilt.
The blame is incredible. It really eats at your soul, because everything we do as a parent, we look at ourselves, we internalize and we wonder, where did I go wrong? Why is he doing this? Why won't he stop doing this? And like you mentioned, not one thing seems to be the solvent for
that's
this.
Right. The right answer. You're right.
And it's a lot of, they say a family that plays together stays together. And
I know you eat dinner with the kids. I know you spend time. And he's not your only child.
No, I have 2 younger children.
Yep. And now both boys.
Mm-hmm. They're all boys.
And it must scare you a little bit.
It petrified me. I think, at one point, our family was being destroyed, by the behavior. And, what do you do? I felt alone. I felt there was nobody who could relate to me. I felt there was nobody who I could speak to about this. You suffer.
And his father wasn't on the scene.
No.
You had separated. And so that was difficult. It's hard enough when you have 2 people to try to deal with it. I know my wife has been a huge support for me in raising the kids. But to try to do it alone, I can't even imagine.
It's difficult. It is difficult, but I wrote the book because I think that there's so many parents out there who are going through the same thing, and they don't know where to go. They don't know where to turn, It's an awful thing, and it's very too common these days, what we're going through with our children and our teenagers.
And I know the audience at this point is very interested. They're probably saying, boy, I definitely have got to see this book. You can't. Do you know this book is not even ready yet? The book is just going to press. We're, days away from seeing a copy of this book. This is what the cover would kind of look like, but even that's not finalized yet. So I'm going to ask you a question. What about the end of the book? Now, you have an ending to this book, or is this saga still continuing?
No, well, the book itself is written. It's finished. It's, like you said, it's going to the presses. It will be available on Amazon and Kindle in about 10 days.
Oh, good, 10 days.
And it will be in Barnes & Nobles probably after the holidays.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
But
and I know that people who want to see you in person can come to the Mayapack Library, meet the writers,
right.
February 6th. So you'll be there to talk to people about this. And the thing about the book that just moves me is that you speak directly to mothers and fathers about what it's like, and feeling that you were on the right path, that you were doing some of the right things, but then it just fell apart. And was there any point that you thought you could reel this in?
There was times that I thought we would, be able to move forward.
That it was going to be okay.
But when there's someone in the household that is self-destructive,
right? The others suffer too.
Absolutely. And, when addiction is involved and they're stealing and lying, it's hard to trust. And when you do move forward, but then something happens and that trust is broken again, you're back to where you were. And it's really just a vicious cycle. And, if somebody is not willing to, go for counseling or get help or is rebelling, it's very painful.
Did any advice help? Did anybody say anything that made sense?
Lots of people said stuff. Lots of people tried to give me advice, or guide me. But I can't make my son. You couldn't make your son.
I know.
You can't make somebody want to change. They have to be ready to change on their own.
You're so
right. Our relationship was tumultuous at one point.
And drugs add a whole new dimension.
Yeah.
It's not like you're dealing with a child anymore. You're dealing with a child and this monster on his shoulder.
Right.
And I mean, the drugs speak for him sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this thing about tough love, it's just, I don't know. You know, I know that when my kids were growing up, you know, people would say to me, "You're too easy. You're too easy. Let him go. Let him fall on his face. Let him fail, and then he'll learn." You know what I'm thinking? Yo, that's my son you're talking about. When he lands on his face, that's my face.
But sometimes that's what you have to do.
I know.
Unfortunately, it's very sad, it's very heartbreaking, but sometimes that's what you have to do.
And I know in the book, I mean, those were the most moving chapters for me, where you actually rationalized how irrational it is, but that you have to do it. And I mean, there were points in that book where you were sitting alone crying by the phone. You had me. I mean, I was crying right along with you. It was amazing. I remember when you were in the workshop trying to read, and there were times when you were crying and had to hand the manuscript to another person, but they had to hand it off because they were crying too. It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. You know, it's no joke when people say the one thing that should have had a manual was a kid. But you know, mothers and fathers don't get manuals when kids are born. There's nothing to tell you what to do and not to do.
Right, right. I think that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. I think that, you know, there's so many teenagers and young adults.
Good kids.
Good kids, you know, it's non-discriminatory, you know. But I think that parents also have an addiction to denial.
Yeah.
And I think we deny ourselves that, you know, something's possibly wrong with our child.
And it doesn't just go away. Now, you know, I'm guilty of that myself, where I pray when I'm against the wall, pray that it'll just go away.
Right.
But unfortunately, things like this don't go away.
No, they don't.
Do have to be dealt with. And some of them have to be accepted, where you have to say, you know what, it is not in my power. I can't change this child. And that must be so difficult. You've never really, though, turned your back on this boy.
No. I'm always, you know, I'm always there. I've always been there. There was a time in our life where I did have to sever ties.
Yeah.
Because it was just becoming too destructive.
And for the good of the other two.
The other two, absolutely. And I also, you know, severed ties because I thought that if he felt he was losing his family, he would immediately want to, you know, come home and get whatever help was needed. And
drugs have no sympathy.
No, it's a battle. It's a battle.
It is a battle. So now you've written this book. Does it feel a little better? You get a little weight off your shoulders, or is it still very painful?
You know, unfortunately, when you look back and you think about the memories you have with your child, there are a lot of painful experiences with my oldest son.
Were there good times too?
We did have good times. We did have good times. There was a point when he came home from jail, and he never had his 21st birthday because he was in prison when that had happened.
I know, I was there.
Yes, yes. And I
was
planned
at that
this
birthday party.
Yes, and I planned this wonderful party for him, and that was at a time where he was doing good and he was working and he was home, and you know, unfortunately, something happened again after that. But
so now the road's still rocky.
The road is a little rocky. He is
better.
Yes, he's better. You know, I don't really want to say too much because of the book, but
I know.
You know,
I know.
But he's okay. You know.
So you're ready to get out there. And you're ready to talk to parents. This book is going to be a smash, Sheila. It's going to be a smash.
Thank you.
Because this kind of thing has no boundaries.
No.
Black, white, rich, poor, red, green. It doesn't matter. And when it's your child, it is your child.
Yes.
And it hurts.
It hurts a lot. It hurts a lot. It does hurt a lot. But I think it's something that needs to be addressed because it's really just too common now, and it has to stop.
It is too common now.
We're losing our children.
Recently we had Dorothy Kalaki. And Dorothy Kalaki is an 85-year-old writer who is writing musings and she's writing about things that she's experienced over the years. And I had to agree with her. Life has changed. And people let things all hang out in a whole lot of different ways than they did many years ago. And in a lot of ways, our kids are in danger.
Yes.
They're in danger. These are dangerous times to raise children. Drugs and violence, wars going on at all times. There's so many crazy things. Role models. Who are our role models? And some of them scare me half to death. Good people, whole different set of values from the ones I remember. You know, back when I was at the kitchen table at 5:30 or else.
That's
things
right.
are different today.
That's right.
They're different.
I think things need to, you know, there's an old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And I think it needs to go back to that, because we really are losing a whole society of young children.
You've heard me say it with Hauntings of the Hudson River. When George Denny was in the situation he was in.
Right.
A 17-year-old boy was arrested and then hanged.
Right.
The only person to hang in Putnam County. And I've said this before. It takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to hang one. We all need to be together.
That's right.
However, I'm not going to blame Putnam County because it's so difficult. What is right? What is wrong? I taught for 35 years. Was I always on the money with my students? Absolutely not. Because they were all so different. And you had to readjust every time. And sometimes you had to readjust 20 times in one day, from class to class, from seat to seat. People are so different. Some need the iron fist, some need the golden heart. It's just,
But they need it, and we need to be there to give it to them.
So you need to be there. Whatever it is you're doing, you need to do it together. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Regrets.
I think, you know, do we all have regrets or what we could have done different as a parent?
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Absolutely, but it's, as my mother says, water under the bridge.
Yep.
There's nothing.
Got to keep moving forward. Were there times when you said, I can't, my feet are frozen, I can't move forward?
There were times that I definitely cried myself to sleep, didn't know what the next day was going to bring, you know, if my son would be dead or alive or in jail or...
He's had some trouble in jail. He was almost killed in jail.
He was stabbed.
He was stabbed in jail. That phone call?
I was on the phone with him when he was stabbed.
Oh, my God.
And
so you actually heard his screams while he was being stabbed?
Well, it was not a scream, but a gasp, a grunt.
God. And then he said to you, Mom, I've just been stabbed?
No, the phone disconnected.
Oh, my God.
I didn't know he was stabbed at that moment, you know, until later.
Now, there's one part of your book that blew me away. The phone call explaining the robbery he was involved in. And you spoke with him about what he had done.
That's at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's where I decided to start the book, because, you know, there had been so many things that have happened, like I had mentioned, from the time he was 13 to 16. And then this happened, and, you know, at that point I had thrown him out of the house. And he took this traveling sales position, and he was in Long Island. And he ended up entering a woman's home, and he was arrested for burglary. And he had called me at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's why I decided to start the book, because that was such a traumatic thing for me. You know, we had been through some things, but to, you know, hear him call me at 4 o'clock in the morning saying he was, you know, being arrested for burglary, and, you know, could I come get him? And I was just, I felt very discombobulated. I felt very dizzy and lightheaded. And I, you know, it was just, it was very surreal. Like, you know, are we to this level now? It was like.
So, if you look a mother in the eye, what advice could you possibly give her? Is there anything that would make sense
Yeah, I think one thing I would say is if you suspect something is wrong in your child's life, something is.
Don't ignore it.
Something is.
Yep.
And, you know, they have bedrooms and, you know, they're living under your roof, you know. Some people say, oh, I'm not going to invade their privacy. Well, I don't necessarily.
Sometimes you need to.
Yeah, I don't necessarily
if you had invaded
feel
the
that way.
privacy, maybe you could have made a difference.
You need to know what's going on.
Yeah, you need to know what's going
Right.
on. And when when a kid's too quiet in a room, something's not right.
Yeah, you know, children have behaviors, they have patterns, and when those patterns change and alter, something's going on.
So it's the parent's obligation to stick your nose in there once in a while.
Be a parent, not their friend.
Be their parent, not their friend.
Right.
That's good advice.
I think, you know, I was a young mother when I had Michael, and I think that I was more his friend than a parent. And
now, how old is Michael now?
He's going to be 25 in February.
25.
So, you know, I had him quite young, and I don't know if that's necessarily a factor, but I think that I was more of a friend than a mom. And
now, since all of this, he's become a father himself.
Yes, he is.
My goodness.
Twins.
Twins.
A boy and a girl, and they're just beautiful.
Oh, my God. Do you think that will help?
I think it has.
Yeah.
I
It's
can't
already taught him
explain
a
it.
little sense of responsibility. Scary, though. Scary.
He is an amazing father. I have to say that. I'm quite proud of him.
That's important. Now, the book doesn't end with the twins. The book ends before the twins.
Yes. Yeah.
By the end of the book, what is the final word to mothers?
Well, I ended the book on a situation that happened with Michael and my other son, Anthony, my middle son. And it was traumatic for Anthony, and it was, you know, again, heartbreaking. And I think parents need to intervene in their children's lives. I think communication is, you know, very important.
And you have a son who's involved in acting and
Yes.
who's
My younger son, AJ.
becoming very successful. Putting your efforts there too.
Absolutely.
Stand by him.
Absolutely.
I can just imagine how difficult it must be to sometimes put Mikey out of your head, put AJ in your head, understand that these are three completely different people. How does Mikey feel about the book?
At first, you know, he didn't have any feelings really about it. I don't think either one of us thought it would become the book that it became.
Yep. It's quite an amazing book.
Thank you. And I think that he did read the first few chapters, and he cried.
Wow.
And he has not finished the book.
Wow.
I'm going to give him his own copy. Now he is supportive, you know. I think we both feel that, we've even discussed it about him writing his story. And, you know, because there's a lot of young kids that are sitting in jail or in rehabs or in a shelter.
Yep. A moment, one moment can change your life completely. And if you could catch that right kid at the right time, or the right mother who can catch the right kid at the right time, and just change one life by this book will have been worth it.
And that's our feeling on it.
Yep.
And that's our feeling on it.
And it will.
I
This
hope
book
so.
has changed me. Sheila, this book has changed me. I see my children in a different light because of this book.
Wow.
It's a powerful book.
Thank you.
And it's written extremely well.
Thank you.
It's just from the heart. I cannot recommend this book enough. In mourning the loss of a living child, the pain that a parent goes through, the guilt, the fear, the worry, the indecision. Do I turn my head? Do I not turn my head? What do I do? How can I send my child free without me? And yet, it hurts when you don't. So through it all, good therapy?
I hope so. The book?
Yeah.
I hope so, yeah.
I mean, good therapy for you.
It was absolutely...
Has it helped you?
Yeah, it helped me tremendously. I think that's how I initially started writing, because I needed to vent.
Yes.
And, you know, and as I mentioned, there was nobody
and there's
that I
almost
felt...
no place to go.
There is a place in Peekskill.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they have a branch up here. There's one in White Plains. Oh my gosh.
Well, it's not hopeless. There's places
right.
to go.
There's a
people
places.
to see, people to talk with. You can't talk to everybody, but you do need to talk to somebody.
Family ties.
Okay. Say it again.
Family Ties.
Okay.
It's a wonderful organization. You know, helps parents with children with different kinds of issues, whether it's, you know, drugs or ADD or whatever.
Yeah.
Lots of, you know, resources there.
If you had it to do all over again?
In what sense do you mean, having how I would handle Mike?
Right.
I don't know. I think
I know.
there's no
and
answer.
That's exactly why I asked you, because I don't know if the book gives you any one solution to the problem, because I don't think there is one solution.
There's not.
There isn't. There isn't. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And I think it's just very important that you, I think you were right that you have to be involved, especially at an early age. If you have a 12 or 13-year-old that seems to be on the wrong track, you have got to get involved.
Absolutely.
You've got to get involved.
Absolutely.
And you can't say, kids do that, because there's a point of no return.
That's right. That's
and
right.
once that kid has been down that road too long, you're not going to get him back.
You're not going to get him back without a very long fight. You know, the title in Mourning the Loss of a Living Child is how I felt. It's, you know, I felt like my son was gone, and I was just mourning him, and I wanted him back. And
it was almost as if he had died.
His spirit had died.
Yeah,
his spirit had died.
Well, let me tell you something. Your spirit will be far from dead after reading this book. You are going to be riveted to your seat. This book will take you on a wonderful ride through a difficult time called parenting. I'm going to ask you to stay tuned to this show. I'm going to ask you to listen to a couple authors, but before you move to any other author, watch for the coming out of this book. Within the next 3 weeks, it will be available, and you need to get a copy. Sheila,
thank you.
How can I thank you?
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing a little bit of your heart with us.
Thank you.
Stay tuned next week for Let's Talk Writing. Pleasure to be here with you. We'll see you next week.